So my name is Dee McLaughlin. I'm from the Creggan estate in Derry. I've grown up in the Creggan estate and I still live in the Creggan estate. I've been fortunate to work in the community and I am a local youth worker as well. So I came out in 2001 when I was 19 years of age as a gay man. At that time, I was having a lot of issues. I was in denial. I was actually afraid, obviously, because of the stigma and everything else that was going on at the time. But it was something I had to do for myself. Knowing that I was a gay young man, I was terrified, and I was terrified of the repercussions that I would have had if I had disclosed that I was gay. So I tried my best to fit in and tried my best to just, at that time, was what I would have called normal. Holding that to yourself and thinking, what, my life is ruined, praying for this to go away because you didn't want to be this person because of the way society at that time and the stigma around it and the name calling, the abuse that people got. One particular incident stood out. I was in secondary school and there was one of my classmates went to sit beside me. It wasn't his usual seat. And he turned around and says, "I'm not sitting beside you, you poof," in front of the whole class. I'll never forget that feeling. I'll never forget the whole class looking, some of them laughing and sniggering. You're trying to hide this part of you. And then when somebody's exposing that, the pain and the hurt that that causes is unbelievable. The fear of God was, as I said, and I know I said it before, I prayed for it to go away. I begged for God to take it away from me. I am a practicing Catholic and I do have a good faith. And you know, for me, I was born this way, and I think that's a perception that a lot of people can't get. I was born this way. I didn't want this when I was younger, but thankfully now I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm comfortable with who I am, and do you know what? I didn't make me. This is just the way I was born. My mental health had got really, really poor, and I just knew this was the point. I had a big decision to make. I was like, I can't live this lie any longer. It was like a whole new way of life. It was like once you were out, and just making that disclosure was just, it was very, very good for me. But at the time I was thinking, if this goes another way, what am I going to do? You know, but it was at that point where I was going, I can't not be myself any longer. I need to let this out. So it just came to the point one night, it all came to a head that I just disclosed to some of my friends on a night out. And thankfully they were very, very, very supportive and very accepting. Now, I was a wee while after that before I came out to my family, because you're kind of thinking, what shame am I bringing to your family? You know, the responsibility of coming out and that onus of being gay at that time for me, it wasn't just about me, it was about everybody else that I love and all my family, all my friends. So when I did come out, I was very, very lucky. I was very supported. And you know what, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, but I know a lot of people and a lot of experiences over the years are completely different in a very negative way. I always think, what if I had never made that decision? Where would I be? At that time, my mental health, just before I come out, was really, really poor. And anybody that was in my life at that time and are still in my life will tell you that that was a very bad time in my life. If I had to carry on that journey, would I even be here? You know, that's the thing I have to think about. You know, living that lie and being told that you can't be your true, authentic self is a very, very scary and worrying feeling. And would I have moved away? I don't know where would I have been. But at that time, if I hadn't been able to come out like some of the generations before, I don't know where I would have been. It's so important to be yourself. It's so important to just be able to be yourself. You were born this way. We were all born this way. And it's so important just to be able to express yourself, be loved and be who you are. My story is just one of many from this town and the north of Ireland. I want to learn more about the history of the LGBTQIA+ community, my own community. I reached out to the human rights organisation, the Museum of Free Derry, and I was able to get in touch with Ciara from the museum for a discussion about the recent history of the LGBTQIA+ community. They travelled the north of Ireland with a photographic exhibit called Queering the North. Ciara, it's so nice to meet you. And
nice to meet you too, Dee.
Would you give us a wee introduction about what it is, what kind of work it is you do, and a wee bit about the museum?
Yes, so my name's Ciara and I work for the Bloody Sunday Trust / Museum of Free Derry. And my role is mainly working with schools and young people, because obviously we're an educational organisation as well as a human rights organisation. So one of the pieces of work that we've been doing is like a local history project.
Brilliant.
So central to that we kind of looked at Derry's social history, you know, because young people in schools are learning about Henry VIII and his wives, but they're not learning about history from their city. And, you know, so we wanted to focus on workers' rights and LGBTQ plus rights and sort of the history of activism with that sort of human rights focus. So the exhibition that we've set up here today, Queer in the North, that's part of a sort of larger piece of work that's you know, designed to tour. We've also been able to bring it into schools, and we created like a few sort of resources to use in classrooms as well, just to sort of make it as accessible and as fun as possible. But we just felt that it's really important for young people to sort of know their history and know that, you know, gay people have always existed. It's not just a history of oppression, it's also a history that, you know, everyone can be proud of and inspired by, and there's all these amazing sort of Derry characters that just contributed so much to making Derry and the North just a better place to live in. You know, it's really important, I think, for everyone, but especially younger generations, to see that actually some of the rights that we take granted today, they were fought for tooth and nail, and so we should always keep that in mind. Partly, like, I just find it very inspiring and very hopeful, because you go, God, if that's the way things were once, and look how far we've progressed and look how much there is to celebrate, but also really important to recognise that those rights can be taken away again. So we should never stop being vigilant, because you look at what's going on, you know, at the moment, there's kind of a wave of rights being rolled back. You know, we've seen the British government is trying their best to you know, they want to get rid of, like, you know, Bill of Rights. In America, they're taking away reproductive rights, you know, with repealing Roe v. Wade, and they're gunning for gay marriage next. You know, and there's nothing to say that couldn't happen here. So I think it's like, education is very important. Saying to people, especially LGBT young people, you're here, you have a history, you should be proud. There's nothing wrong with who you are, but also we all, you know, if you care about human rights, we need to be educated and we need to be vigilant as well. People
that maybe are getting bullied, people maybe are getting name called, people that are really struggling with their sexuality, some of those children and those teenagers or whoever it is. How important do you think that has been to raise awareness for people that might be slagging people who are gay, or giving them, or people who are getting bullied, and for people who are identifying as gay, trans, or?
I think we've seen within the groups that we've worked with, you know, you can always tell which sort of students or young people, they're a wee bit quieter. You can maybe see some discomfort, but that's really good as well, because you don't want people to just be in your comfort zone. Like, you know, in some ways, reasons why, you know, maybe some young people have those kind of homophobic attitudes. They might be hearing stuff at home. They're probably reading a lot of stuff online. Like, I just think that all these social media hate influencers have so much to answer 100%. For. And it's very important too that they can see that their schools are taking the lead by inviting us in to do this work.
It's going, as you say, it's not going against, but it's really good to see schools embracing that and embracing that kind of change and seeing there's a need for this. There's a need for this learning, and ultimately it's going to help them. Meeting with Ciara and viewing Queering the North exhibit was a powerful experience. The history is so recent and so troubled. Just to think that it was illegal to be gay in the north of Ireland until 1982. This is shocking and disgusting to think. So I want to talk to people who have lived through those times and battled to be where they are today. Fortunately enough, I was able to sit down with Shag, a local activist and committee member of Féile Pride. Shag, can you just tell us where you're from and how you happened to come to Derry?
Okay, it's nice to meet you, Dee, as well.
So
We've
nice
never
to
met
meet you.
before. I'm from Donegal, a wee village called Killigordon. I was born in 1968 and I lived there until I was 15 years old.
How did you come to live in the north there? I know
How
you've lived in a few different places, haven't you?
Well, I grew up in Donegal, eventually moved to Oma, lived in Oma for about 10 years, maybe 10, 15 years, and then moved to Derry in 1993.
Fantastic.
So I've been here since.
Did you come out when you lived in Killigordon, or when did you come out? When did you come out?
I think I was maybe 19 or 20. I was quite old Nazis coming out because you couldn't come out. I certainly didn't come out in Donegal because there was no, people like me didn't exist in Donegal then. I mean, I could see friends of mine who were gay men who were treated really badly. So it was like, right, I'm not doing that. I'm going to wait to see, because, you know, you felt it was a bad thing and you felt like there was something wrong with you because you were getting so much negativity from people. So moved to Oma and it came out in Oma, but a lot of negative stuff in Oma as well, because you were not accepted as a gay person. So there was a lot of beatings, there was a lot of hate crimes, you know, a lot of that was going on.
What kind of things, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
did you or your friends or different people experience from what you remember?
Well, I mean, I would have been shouted at a lot on the street. You know, just even walking up the town, you would have been shouted, you'd hear somebody shouting at you, and you knew before you left the house that you were going to get this abuse. You even would, you know, there would be people walking past you, nudging you know, walking at you deliberately, or, I mean, there was people spitting in your face. You know what I mean? I swear to God, all of this stuff. And you just kept your head down and was like, right, say nothing, because you were terrified, like. You know what I mean? You were terrified and you didn't know what to do. And this was a common thing and you just thought this was normal. I mean, obviously it affects everybody differently, but for me, it was like, you're not putting me down. I'm, you know, and that was the reason I did Pride first year, 2010.
And that leads nicely on to, so the 90s. When did you see a change? When did you see a shift?
I do believe since the first parade in Derry in 2010 made a huge, huge, huge change. There wasn't a lot of support for it. There was myself, Wendy McCluskey and Sharon Meenan, who basically, Greta as well would have been involved. I hate naming names, which I probably forgot people. But they were mainly involved with getting the parade up and running. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was like, we need to do a parade. We need to get this done. It was like, well, how are you going to do this? I was going, I actually don't know. I don't know what to do. So good people like Sharon Meenan, who knew people in the council, who knew people that I should be speaking to, that was a huge help. On the day of the parade itself, I thought there'd be maybe 100 people to show up. That'll be great. We, you know, did not expect. I think there was nearly 2,000 people that day. It was a huge success, like, it really, really was. Do you know what? I still find it really difficult to see the difference in what's happened, and it has taken me years to think, oh my God, I've done that. I've done that in Derry, and this is, you know,
You should be so proud.
it's amazing, like, when you look back on it now and go, and look what it's like now today. It's incredible.
Shaz's story was both disturbing but yet uplifting. To have grown up in a time where you could be verbally and physically assaulted for expressing your true self to the world. That would be enough to drive anyone out of Derry and out of the north of Ireland. And this again is why I reached out to Jim Doherty, chairperson of Féile Pride, to learn more about his experience growing up as a gay young man in Derry and moving to London so he could be his true self. Jim, can you introduce yourself please and just tell us a wee bit about yourself and when you come out comfortably as a gay man?
Jim Doherty from the top of Hull, currently chairperson of Féile Pride 2023, and I came out in the late 70s when I was about 18. But I went to London to do it, so it wasn't.
Can I ask why you went to London to do that, Jim?
Because there was no possibility of any kind of decent existence here as a gay person at the time. So when I went to London, there was a whole generation of Derry people already there, or who came soon afterwards. So that was the choices at the time.
Could you have been able to come out? What would have been the consequences of coming out at that time in Derry?
Well, I'm not sure about that time, but eventually I think I would have been, but I don't know when that would have been. But I know that people who, my age, my school, my community, who didn't come out and didn't leave are very much affected by it. There's still, you know, some of these people are still not out, but they live very hard, lonely lives, and that's because, you know, the environment they lived in didn't let them live as who they were meant to be.
And do you know what? That's good. You had a plan of action. You knew what your get out was.
Mm-hmm.
Could you think of someone, obviously without naming them, who wouldn't have had that confidence at that time, or other people? And again, I know we're kind of going back to what we were saying about mental health and stuff, but
Loads of people.
And how do you think that affected them? Because as you say, you were quite active and you were quite proactive in how you dealt with things. But for people that didn't have that confidence, or people that were kind of wore down with it,
I mean, some of them died quite young, and that was through like alcohol abuse and stuff like that. And that's the legacy of not having the kind of society you've become accustomed to growing up here now. Do you know what I mean? So
everybody was affected in different ways, and as you say, even like death.
But loads of people did leave, and loads of people were very successful. I mean, in London, when you think about it, in the early 80s, there was a group of Derry people in London. Now, there's no mobiles or social media or anything, but we were known as the Derry girls, and like we didn't have each other's phone numbers or anything like that, or some of us did, but sometimes at the say the Black Cap in Camden Town, you go in and like I ran about 5 people from Derry, and the other thing was like 3 of them were from the unionist community, and that was a different experience for them as well, because they all ended up kind of having more liberal or left-leaning views the more they lived away from this place. But when you ran into like Frankie O'Reilly and the late George G. Long and all Emmons, there was a great loyalty between all the Derry people. You know,
Kind of became your family in London.
it was like a wee community that looked out for each other, and loads of them did well, and loads of them passed on too early too, though.
Again, they lived through that. There was just so many stumbling blocks along the way, wasn't there? And then the emotional side of everything too. You've seen
Half the Derry girls that I referred to earlier on in the conversation are all gone.
So they were all your close friends. They were like your family.
Well, they were friends. I mean, one of my surviving friends in London from Derry he met his partner at primary school on the first day, and they sat beside each other, and when they were 17 they left Derry, and they went to the doctors together when they were 26, and they were told that they were HIV and they were dying, and to go home and put their affairs in order. And one of them did die pretty quickly, and the other one's still here. So it's a terrible tragedy.
What do you think now we're looking towards the future, Jim? I know that we've said that things got very inclusive, and Pride's doing really well. The gay community's really accepted. Now, what do you think the next challenges are, or the current challenges are?
Trans, for sure, yeah. That, and I can't really speak for that community because I'm not trans. But it's nice that trans people are more visible, and they're being more articulate in how they're presenting themselves. And they have 3 or 4 members on the committee, on the Féile Pride Committee this year, is great, because the programming will reflect that thinking.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Brilliant.
But I can't. But that's the next stage, and a lot of gay men will tell you, that's where we were, 20 or 30 years ago, blah blah blah. That's true in a sense. Sometimes I kind of find those remarks kind of like patronising too. This is a new community that are involved in a new fight, so I think that's where the focus is, and we should support them.
The next fight for the LGBTQIA+ community, the fight for trans rights. Now, admittedly, this is a struggle that I have very little knowledge of. It's a community that deserves to be heard and deserves to be visible, and I want to learn more about them and their fight. Thankfully, I was able to sit down with Oliver Grunt, a local trans man, to discuss his story. Oliver, nice to meet you. If you want to introduce yourself, where you're from, what age you are, and just a wee bit of your background, what kind of work you do and stuff.
I'm Oliver Grunt. I'm from Derry, Northern Ireland. I'm 26. I'm a producer and a DJ.
You're from the trans community, if that's all right to say.
Yeah, of course, yes.
When did you realise that you were trans?
I think it was about 12 or 13. I realised there's something wasn't right. I think it was when I first went to my secondary school, which was St Mary's. I realised going to an all-girls school, I didn't really feel like I fitted in. But I just thought that was maybe just, you're young and you're confused and you don't really fit in anyway. But there was just always something that wasn't right, and I remember coming out as gay and coming out as a lesbian and coming out as this, and all this still didn't feel right. And it wasn't until I went there was a thing back then, it was called Tumblr. Years ago, it was like an online website, and there used to be a thing called Tumblr meetups, and I remember going up and meeting up with friends and stuff like that, and I met a person there, and this person was a trans man, and at the time I didn't know what trans was, I hadn't a clue what it was, and I asked one of my friends there, I was like, oh, why is that person actually got like a very like high-pitched voice, and they explained what trans was and who this person was, and everything, words collided, like everything just made sense. What it was.
And do you know what? Like, I suppose that's really interesting to hear, because I was like, I knew it was gay from even before I knew it, but there was a terminology I knew where I belonged and what it was. But for you, that what you're saying there is like you tried to identify as gay, but that wasn't that didn't fit. How did that feel? Were you frustrated by that? Were you scared?
I remember just being so confused that nothing was working at the time. At the time I was going to counsel and stuff like that, and I had a nice counsellor, and he helped me through a lot of like identity things, but as he's passed away now, but like I remember speaking to him a few years ago, and he said he knew before I knew, but he let me come to terms with it myself. Do you know what I mean? But it's just that when you're growing up, you don't know, you're trying to work yourself out first as well, and like what you like, who you are. That was like a completely different ball game altogether to work out if you're trans or not.
And going through, we scared, we worried.
At the time, it was terrifying. At the time, I was suicidal. I was everything like that as well. I was in a really, really bad place.
Was this before you identified as trans?
This is before I realised and after, and it was really like, it's a lot to take in. And when you realise the extent of, well, for you to get to the other side, it's a lot of work, and it's years of patience and having to wait in waiting lists and just even speak to somebody about it, rather than actually medically transitioning. You have to. Did
that seem like a massive uphill battle? Because did you know anybody your age? Did you know anybody locally? I know you spoke to people online. How daunting would that have been?
Absolutely nobody, and nobody understood you, and nobody understood it. And it's trying to explain to somebody, oh, at the time then, I had no facial hair, I had a high-pitched voice, I didn't look how I look now, and it was going, but I feel this way, and they never seen it, they never understood. But what I look like now, I could see it in me back then, but nobody else could. So it was trying to make people understand, and people didn't understand, and that's okay. And some people needed educated a bit better, and that was also okay. But I feel like at the time that I'd done it and was going through it, everybody was learning as I was learning.
Why do you think people are afraid to use certain terminology? Afraid to offend? What do you think that's? What do you think?
I just think people are like pronouns and terminology, and like I was constantly getting like wrong pronouns and people saying she and her, because I didn't look like a maid, I didn't sound like a maid, but I would have completely internalised that and like, you're not respecting me, you know. But it's hard. I understand it's hard when somebody presents themselves and how they look outside, what they feel. Automatically, you're going to call somebody what we're all adapted to. But it is now more so going, oh, but do you know what? Some people don't. Like I had to learn, even growing up. Like people talk about non-binary, I had to learn that, and it's coming from a trans man. I had to learn to go, all right, them, and sometimes I must like said like the wrong pronoun. And it's just going, right, it's better everybody to teach and learn together at the one pace, than there's no point going, but you're calling me the wrong pronoun. You have to ask questions, because you have to inform people. People have to like feel comfortable to ask questions. If somebody asks a question you're not comfortable, you can just go, I'm not comfortable talking about it, and that's fine. Like you have to put your boundary line down too, but where else are they going to learn? Do you know what I mean? If they learn off the internet, fine, but it's always nice to speak to somebody, because I feel like you learn a better understanding. Like I don't make it my whole identity, and some people can, and that's okay, but you're you before you're anything. You don't need to be a massive level. And
I love that.
Do you know what I mean?
That statement you just made.
You're just you. And I'm happy. I'm really, really happy. And there is another side to it. Do you know what I mean? Once you get past the bumps in the road and the mountain going up, there's a happiness there, and you can find peace in yourself.
You're you before you're anything. Being your true and authentic self in the world shouldn't be controversial to anyone. It should be celebrated. Thank you to Oliver for widening my knowledge of the trans community and their ongoing struggle. I think it's important to draw attention to how LGBTQIA plus young people are supported by the youth service today. So I sat down for a discussion with my colleague from St Mary's Youth Club, Peter Nixon.
My name's Peter Nixon. I'm the Senior Youth Worker for North West Youth Service, and I'm based here in St Mary's Youth Club.
Do you feel like it's a safer place for young people now to come out and maybe express and talk about?
I think in general in society for young people, I think they've got bigger platforms, more platforms to be able to express their sexuality where they can find accepted. Now, I find a wee bit of solace in that, but there's also a wee bit of fear around, is there an opportunity for people to try and exploit them if they are on their own, they're isolated, where they're coming out to somewhere and a social media platform. So I think we try and create an atmosphere where young people can come into this building and know it's theirs, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of their background. Yeah. They're young people to us. When you come in through our doors, you're a young person. It doesn't matter if you're gay, if you're straight, or you're lesbian, or it doesn't matter, because you're a young person coming in the door to use the service. They get a game of pool, table tennis, or just chill out and watch Netflix.
Where would you say now would be probably one of the most inclusive spaces for maybe 16 plus?
A lot of our young people seem to gravitate towards one of our other services called Our Space, and it's the part of the youth engagement programme down in the city centre. And it seems to be a great provision for some of our young people who do identify as LGBTQIA+. They come together, they try and support each other.
It's fantastic to hear that there's a safe space in Derry right now where young people from the LGBTQIA+ community can go. I think it's a marker of how far we've come since the 80s or even 10 years ago. So I wanted to hear from young people themselves. What is life like for them now? Are we moving in the right direction? What about here? Like, we're in our space now. I mean, this is dropping. And so would you say this is a great supportive, inclusive space for yourself?
Most of the people here don't really care where you're from or like who you are, really. Somewhere
for you to go and have your space and just be yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's clear to see how inclusive just by the board and just by everything else. The support, obviously, from the service that you get here is obviously excellent. And you know what, you can see how welcoming it is when you come in the door, and you can see how comfortable you are and everybody that's been in here. And you know, I suppose, had any ever experienced any kind of bullying? Or any kind of name calling or any kind of stuff in school, out of school, in the community?
See, in like first and second year, when everyone's kind of at that level of immaturity, it was being called slurs and everything. Before I even realised myself I was bisexual, people were telling me what I was. In first and second year, but then with lockdown, I'm in fifth year now, going on sixth, but when people's levels of maturity rise, it was far, far less. Like, I haven't got anything from anyone in school, maybe in the past 2 years. Everyone's really accepting of who I am, but it's almost more the teachers themselves who've made passive-aggressive comments, things like that. Being in a Catholic school where it's all religious point of views, where it's something taboo that you don't talk about, but my year group's been really supportive of it now. But first and second year, when people were kind of just immature, it was far different then.
Even nowadays, it's still terrifying to, you know, come out to your... Say, I came out like 2 years ago to my mum, and then I was just, you know, you worry about reactions, and then about last Christmas Eve, I came out to my dad, and he was completely, like, he just, you know, loved me. He loved me for who I am, you know. It's not like, I don't think back then you couldn't do it at all, but you know, it's just.
How did you feel that acceptance, that acceptance from your parents? Was it a relief? Describe that for me.
It was amazing, you know. I was just so happy because I was terrified that it was gonna go wrong, because there is people who I've watched it and online and stuff, and there's horrible reactions to that stuff, and I was just terrified.
If there's anybody advice that you would give a young person struggling with their sexuality or sexual identity, or their identity, what would that be?
It's not a big deal. It's just who you are. It's not like, if people care about it, that's kind of their problem. Why should it be yours?
Don't hate yourself for it. You know, just
it's like
accept. Just because others may not agree with it doesn't mean that you need to hate yourself. Just love yourself.
Do you think this is ever going to change? Do you think what do you think? What, in your opinion, because you are the voice of the future, you are going to be the next leaders of the world. What different? What could be done differently?
A lot of younger generations are growing up with more tolerance, more like understanding, and also just more like acceptance of themselves, which makes it easier to accept others. And I feel like the more they get into power, the more they get into like the governments, the whole politics and all that, the more we'll kind of get someplace.
Everybody kind of needs to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the core, from family values, beliefs. And do you think that would make things a lot better if there was a bit more knowledge and not so much fear within families? And
when our generation grows up, considering how accepting they were now compared to the previous generation or two, I think when our generation grows up to be parents, it'll be a far different experience for our children. Like being able to come out and everything. It almost makes me happy, you know what I mean, seeing in the future that our generation is going to be the future leaders, the future parents, raising a new generation where people are comfortable to be who they are.
overall, I've really enjoyed taking part in this project, and all I can say is it's been an eye-opening experience learning so much about the LGBTQIA+ community. From what we've seen, we've come so far and it's unbelievable. But we have to stay vigilant because so much of this progress we've made, it can be easily taken away. For us, it's a fight just to be yourself. If you're struggling in that fight, you know you're not alone. Reach out, talk to people, and use services like our space, and you'll make it.